Hey, everybody out there in podcast land, what is up? It is a great and glorious, a beautiful Friday night here outside the Fortress of Rock studios, June the 7th, 2024. It is time to discuss the music that you and I know and love. Our discussion of the past, the present, the future of rock and roll. Each and every Friday night, episode 147 of the Fortress of Rock starts now. I am your humble and gracious host, the Maestro Kevin Crane, and as always, I am ecstatic. I am happy beyond belief that you have decided to join me on this weekly sojourn through rock and roll. So we start off, as always, with news of the world, our tribute to the late, great Freddie Mercury and Queen. We're going to be all over the place here in segment one. Not a lot of earth shattering news, just little bits and pieces. Of course, a lot of tour news as we get everything wrapped up for the late summer and fall for a lot of these bands. We know touring kind of dies out during the winter. You still have some people out there, some bands out there, but obviously with the weather turning in November all the way through March and April, it's all indoors. And then you have to schedule around football teams and NBA teams and NHL teams. So, dribs and drabs now as these bands and these performers are wrapping up their slates for 2024. But let's start off with the ongoing fight. We've had Hall & Oates. We've had Journey here within the last year on the Fortress of Rock, and we have kind of given you blow by blow, week by week updates on what has been going on with the melodrama in those camps. Now, Journey, they have seemed to have settled their differences. Hall & Oates, they've basically said, I'm done with him, I'm done with him. So they look to be done, but we got hope. And hope is a bad word. Hope is a four-letter word, kids. I hate to be typical, cynical Maestro, but hope is a four-letter word. When we got news a few weeks back that Sebastian Bach said there was just a miscommunication, there was something that was said, something that was emailed that shouldn't have been put out there, he gave us all hope. Now that Skid Row is between singers, gave us hope that we would get a reunion. We would get who we could, who's left from Skid Row, back together again. And of course, we told you last week, Snake Sabo poo-pooed that whole idea. Well, Sebastian Bach was not happy. And I think he finally and cathartically let loose here a few days ago, June the 4th, at his Detroit show. He basically ripped into, and I'm not going to use the language, we always try to keep this available to all the generations so that we can expose the young kids. I hate that choice of words. Stop it, dirty mind. We want the kids to be able to listen as well without upsetting the adults in the room. So let's just say Sebastian Bach used his typical language to describe Skid Row, and then he saw somebody in the crowd wearing a Skid Row shirt with one of the other lead singers featured. And of course, he pointed out, as we have in the past, and I think rightfully so, Skid Row's destroying their legacy with this yearly shift, it seems like, yearly shift in lead singers. So Sebastian Bach went nuts at the June 4th Detroit show, made his voice, his anger known. And Skid Row says, yeah, we're looking at a couple no-name people to take over and jump in. And this is coming from who I think, from what I can tell, sifting through all these interviews, who I think the problem is Rachel Bolan. Rachel Bolan seems to be the one that just despises Sebastian Bach. He seems to be the man behind the curtain. Whereas as Dave Snake Sabo is always out there talking and doing the interviews, Bolan rarely seems to put his 2 cents in, but when he does, he seems to be the one saying, no, that door is closed, locked, padlocked, welded shut forever. And he's the one saying, yeah, we've got a couple of unknown singers in mind. And I will just say again, this will continue to destroy the legacy of Skid Row. It's a joke now. They're a joke. You can't have 4, 5, 6 lead singers and act like it's the same band. You just can't. So, of course, on the heels of the announcement that they are, again, looking at unknown singers to jump in, we all know about the situation here with Eric Grunwald leaving recently, amicably, due to health issues. Lizzie Hale stepping in for a handful of shows, but we all knew that was never going to be a permanent solution. So Skid Row says, let's release a CD, DVD package live in London featuring Eric Grunwald, who is no longer with the band. And the sad thing is, that was the best. That incarnation, that version of Skid Row was the best that we have had since Sebastian Bach left. The Gang's All Here was a tremendous album, but you just burned too many bridges now. You just burned too many bridges with the fans, with Bach, and I'm sure he, in no way, shape, or form, is without blame here in this situation. You can tell in interviews that he's not the easiest person in the world to get along with, but it's rock and roll. So Skid Row releasing live in London on September the 20th. A CD, DVD package, as I mentioned, also double LP, and of course on digital. Now, this is sad news for the Van Halen fans out there. You guys probably already know about this, but this is almost putting another, and I hate to use this analogy when we're talking about the late great Eddie Van Halen, but this news is almost putting another nail in the coffin in terms of a full-fledged reunion, tribute, whatever you want to call it. I think what we're going to get from Sammy Hagar and Michael Anthony and Joe Satriani here this summer with the Best of All Worlds tour is the closest we're going to get, along with Wolfgang playing his father's music at some of these tribute shows, the Taylor Hawkins tribute show. Alex Van Halen. And if you've got a ton of money, I mean a ton of money, I'm sure you are more than welcome to sign up at Backstage Auctions to put your bid in on over 350 lots as Alex Van Halen clears out his personal warehouse, selling instruments, entire drum kits, gear, all sorts of concert memorabilia. And I have to echo the sentiment from one Michael Anthony. Of course, Michael Anthony, bass player for Van Halen, saying it's just sad. It's just sad. So between this auction and, of course, Brothers coming out later this year, the memoir from Alex Van Halen, it is sad. As Michael Anthony said, it is unbelievably sad because it just doesn't seem like Alex Van Halen will ever be able to move on. And that's fine. Everybody deals with grief in their own way. And that bond between them must have been ungodly strong. Maybe the strongest I've ever seen in show business in my life. For Alex to just go away after his brother died and say, I'm done with it all. Screw it. And it rips you and tears you apart. If you have brothers, sisters you're close to, if you have friends you've had for decades, the feeling, you understand the feeling that Alex Van Halen, the feelings that he's processing for the past years, ever since Eddie died. And now hopefully this brings him closure. Selfishly, as a Van Halen fan, it's disheartening, but I hope it brings Alex peace and closure. That's all that matters. If it does, then good. It served its purpose. A bizarre situation overseas. Now, we talked here a few minutes ago about Lizzie Hale of Hailstorm jumping in for a few shows for Skid Row. One of the other great, awesome, newer female lead singers in rock and roll is, of course, Taylor Momsen with The Pretty Reckless. And if you have not heard this story, I'm not taking credit for this, other people have said this, a classic rock and roll story. Now, Taylor Momsen and her band, The Pretty Reckless, are opening for AC/DC as they take their current jaunt through Europe. And hopefully, please, 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 2025, we will get AC/DC in the United States. The reason I say 2025, just talked about it at the top of the show. I can't see AC/DC playing inside venues. They're going to wait until they can get out in baseball stadiums, football arenas, outdoor venues in 2025. But Taylor Momsen, where's Ozzy Osbourne when you need him? The video is out there and it is wild. It is wild. She's on stage performing and a bat is visible on her leg. And she did get bit by this bat in Sevilla. That's where the concert was taking place. Now, she soldiered on, as all great rock and rollers do, but she's going to have to get rabies shots thanks to getting bit by a bat on stage, as the Pretty Reckless have been opening for AC/DC. Wild, weird, wild, crazy stuff, Ed. Now, new music and some reissues. We've talked recently about how the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame are pinheads. Well, yeah, that's nothing new. But we were talking specifically here about MC5. and how they're going to get in later on this year into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, but now no original member is around to accept the award, to bask in the glow of the accolades. All the original members of MC5 are passed away, dead and gone. So on top of the bitter irony that they will go into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame with that situation, they are also releasing their first album since 1971. Now, this has been in the works for a while, so it's not shocking. It's not something coming out of left field. All the music had pretty much been recorded, and there's a lot of huge heavy hitters, guest stars on Heavy Lifting. Now, I believe the title track has already been released a while back with Tom Morello. But Heavy Lifting from the MC5 will be out October the 18th. And unfortunately, again, pointing out no surviving member left with the MC5. Brand new news today, brand new album news. Awesome, fantastic news. Supercharged is out October the 11th. What is Supercharged? Supercharged is the brand new album from The Offspring. Love The Offspring. Cannot get enough of The Offspring. So our fall release is starting to shape up now. Big one for October, Supercharged from The Offspring. Awesome. And of course, I think when they announce a new album, they usually release a song. So you might want to stick around for Wrap It Up, segment 4, and we might talk a little bit more about that. Now, in reissues, if you have a ton of money, probably don't need as much as you would need to buy something from Alex Van Halen's personal collection from his warehouse, but still, you're going to need a pretty penny. If you are a Who fan, if you are a fan of Pete Townshend, Mr. Townshend is releasing a 14-disc box set on July the 26th. Now, some of this music has been available digitally only. I think you could go through his website and purchase some of these concerts, but yes, this is a live in concert compilation, 14 discs. You've got to be a diehard fan for this. It is called simply Live in Concert 1985 through 2001. Now this will feature the rock opera Lighthouse, which was a project that was abandoned by The Who. I believe it turned into, in a way, shape, or form, into Who's Next. And then there is a guest appearance from David Gilmour of Pink Floyd on this as well. I think he played at one of the shows featured in this, again, 14-disc box set. So get those cash registers cha-chinging. I know, that's a dated reference. I still love it. I should have saved it for segment 3. I want to go back. All right, now we move on to the live news. We have yet another concert on the agenda here at the Fortress of Rock. Queens of the Stone Age, bucket list. Check off one band off the Maestro's bucket list. Didn't have to beg and plead my friends, but I felt like I was going to have to. I was going to have to supplicate myself if they said no. Luckily, a few weeks, maybe a month ago, they had mentioned that they were cool with going to see Queens of the Stone Age. Now, I figured their tour was all done, over, finished, and I was going to have to wait a couple years till their next album and their next tour. But they decided to tack on 4 final dates for The End is Nero, their world tour they've had going on for quite a while. These 4 final dates are in the US. I believe there's a couple festival dates mixed in there as well. But one of those final dates is in Chicago, and we will have that review for you. I will be there early October 2024 for Queens of the Stone Age, as they have added 4 final dates for The End is Nero. Now, if you're lucky enough to be able to track down in a bigger city, Zebra, one of my old school 80s guilty pleasure bands, they're still out there. They don't just play the West Coast like a band like Y&T. I wish Y&T, and I know there's financial issues involved with some of these bands from the 80s that don't really sell records anymore. But Zebra is actually going to be out and about, kind of, sort of, maybe, getting out into the Midwest, the East Coast, the South. Not for a lot of dates. They have added 10 dates to their 2024 tour. They say they're going to add more. So hopefully, that's another one where I might have to beg my friends, plead with them. Let's go. Let's go. Am I desperate enough to go by myself? Depending on where it is, yes. That's how much I love Zebra. All right, Guns N' Roses. No, not talking about the band itself, but current and former members of Guns N' Roses. Now, Steven Adler, we all know, was the drummer for Guns N' Roses, Appetite for Destruction, and Lies, GNR Lies. Basically kicked out of the band because of substance abuse issues. He has cleaned himself up. He has got a band together. I don't want to call them a cover band, but they sound like a cover band. Steven Adler's band will be playing 8 dates in the US so far. They're another one like Zebra, who are keeping it open-ended, saying we could add more dates down the road. Those dates will be June through August. Those 8 dates for Steven Adler's band. Now also Duff McKagan, current member of Guns N' Roses. He is on his Lighthouse tour, and he has added 7 U.S. dates to that in November. Like I said, we're getting into the fall here, so the summer dates are already booked. Now we're pushing into October, November. Other news with Duff McKagan: he has just released a double live album called Tenderness Live in LA that was recorded back in 2019. 17 tracks on Tenderness. So if you're a Duff McKagan solo fan, that's an added treat for you. I've tried to listen to his solo stuff. It really does not do much for me. Sorry. Just trying to be honest with you kids. Now, Robin Trower, legendary guitar player, unfortunately has had to cancel his U.S. tour, which was slated for September and October of 2024 due to health issues. Cyndi Lauper has announced her farewell tour. October through December of 2024, 23 North American dates so far. And I have no problem with Cyndi Lauper. She was an integral part of the 80s. I love 80s music, so all my love to Cyndi Lauper. But seeing some of the venues that she's booking herself in, and we just talked recently about the issues the Black Keys had with having to cancel their arena tour because there was no interest in tickets. And the prices were very, very high on top of that. And I have a bad feeling the same fate could potentially befall Cyndi Lauper. Let's just put it that way. I hope not. I hope her farewell tour goes swimmingly. I hope it goes very well. Again, October through December with 23 dates in North America. But wow. I know, for instance, she's playing the United Center in Chicago. That seems like a lot of seats to fill for Cyndi Lauper. Let's just put it that way. And then the Sex Pistols. The Sex Pistols are getting back together. Oh, wait. Not all of the Sex Pistols. The Sex Pistols are reforming for 2 August benefit shows in London, England. However, Johnny Rotten, aka John Lydon, isn't welcome. He will not be partaking. Now, we all, of course, know that Sid Vicious, the rock and roll legendary story, the tragedy, I should say, even though if you abuse drugs, you kind of ask for what you get. But Sid Vicious has passed away. Now John Lydon, not welcome. And he put up a big stink here recently within the last few years about was it an FX? I believe it was an FX on Hulu miniseries that looked back at the history, the early history of the Sex Pistols, and he complained about it and he didn't like it. He does a lot of complaining, let's put it that way. He loves to get a microphone in front of his face and complain and whine and cry. Maybe back in the late 70s, that was seen as being rebellious and punkish and promoting anarchy, but now he just comes off as a little baby. So that's probably why the rest of the remaining members, the surviving members of the Sex Pistols said, nah, we're good. Take the nights off, John. We don't need you. But that will do it for News of the World. Hope you enjoyed it. We've got another month for you. We've been extended by Spotify as our home studio. We've been extended until mid-July, so you will still, for another month, get cheesy, short music interludes to break up the 4 segments here on the Fortress of Rock. About 10 seconds from now, breakdown on the Maestro. I'll be right back. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Fortress of Rock. I am your host, the Maestro, Kevin Crane. Segment 2 is Breakdown, our tribute to Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers here on June the 7th, 2024, episode 147. Going to do something a little different this week. This is one of those down weeks where we didn't have a new album to review for you. Now, in the coming couple of weeks, we will. Stick around for Wrap It Up for those albums and that information. Those of you who've listened over the past weeks and months know most likely what albums those are. But we're going to travel back in time. Yeah, Doc Brown, he's not ready yet. He's out tinkering with the rock and roll DeLorean out in the garage here at the Fortress. But when it comes to our album reviews, I normally don't like to do this. I will break the rule on occasion if it's somebody, a band, a performer that I really, really love. Recently here, we did it with Dire Straits and their live box set. So we've got 2 albums for you. Let's start off with Rat. 2 archival releases, let's put it that way. So Rat is up first. Now, I believe this was available back roughly 17 years ago, but it's now being reissued in physical format, as it always seems to happen with smaller labels. And the same can be said of the second look back that we're going to talk about, featuring Rick Emmett of Triumph in a few minutes. Both of these were delayed. So I don't believe the physical version of Rarities by Rat is out yet. It was supposed to be out May the 31st. I think it's been pushed back now to June the 14th. But as I mentioned before, it's been out there for a while digitally. You can jump on Spotify and listen to it. So we're going to go ahead and review it for you. Now, if you want the CD, next Friday is the day you should be able to get it. There's only 9 songs on Rarities. So that right away, I don't know if it's really worth your money. Last I saw, the CD was going for anywhere between $13 and $15. For 9 songs, come on. There's inflation and then there's just stupidity. Especially because you don't really get a lot of new stuff here or interesting outtakes, demos. So with both of these, Rat and then Rick Emmett, we will not necessarily run through track by track, at least in terms of great detail. We'll give you the highlights. I will go into more detail with Rick Emmett, and I'll explain why in a minute. But with Rat, track 1 on Rarities is Tell the World, which is a phenomenal song. So this is why I don't like to review live albums, greatest hits, is because we know the songs. And usually the songs, when they were released on the official studio albums, were the best version. Are there exceptions? Of course there are. But Tell the World is off the Rat EP, which features the legs of Tawny Kitaen, the late, wonderful Tawny Kitaen, with rats clinging to her fishnet stockings. And if you've never listened to Rat's EP, their initial debut EP, you are missing out. It is raw, nasty, but that's all in a good way. And one of the best songs on their EP is Tell the World. So it's kind of hard, again, to judge a song like Tell the World, because I always look at it as an underrated gem in the catalog of Rat. What you get on Rarities, though, really isn't a ton different from the version you get on the EP. So, great song, but in this particular case, not a lot of interest in it. Now, track 2 is one of the 2 songs out of the 9 here on rarities that I will point out as a positive. Now, this is supposedly the earliest version recorded of Round and Round, their epic classic benchmark song. It is not fully formed. The lyrics are not fully written out. There are pauses and gaps where it's just the band with no Stephen Pearcy singing. So in that sense, you can tell it is a very early raw version. But this is the kind of stuff that I can get into because it's different enough from the more polished, and nobody's going to say Round and Round as a song was polished and overproduced. But this version, definitely different from the final version of Round and Round. Stephen Pearcy again takes a backseat to the rest of the band, but the rest of the band is a little bit looser, seems to be having a little bit more fun. Drums, guitars, bass, and it adds a different dimension to the song. It's not vastly different, but once again, polished, tight is what you're going to get on the final album. This is more fun because it's a little bit looser and everybody's just jamming, but they still stay within the structure of the song, what it was going to become. You just have to listen to it. Trust me on this. This is almost worth the price of admission. Now, this is where we're going to do a little bit of Evelyn Wood speed reading. And if you don't get that reference, you are way too young. We've got a demo at track 3 of I Want It All, which has never been one of my favorite Rat songs to begin with, so a demo version doesn't do much for me. And then it's 5 live songs in a row. In Your Direction, Round and Round Again, Body Talk, Drive Me Crazy, and Wanted Man. Now, I'm a huge fan, obviously, of Rat, and specifically their debut full-length album, in addition to the EP, which I love as well, but of course, Out of the Cellar. Beginning to end, fantastic. And Wanted Man, track 8, In Your Direction, track 4, both off that album. The songs, the studio versions, are exemplary. Some of the best you're going to get from 80s hair metal. The live versions, they're okay. They're fine. I don't think Rat has ever been noted in the annals of rock and roll history as the greatest live band ever. I've seen them once, but it wasn't the full band. Of course, Robin Crosby had passed by the time I got to see them. They're fine. They're solid. But you can tell with these live songs, they were not the Foo Fighters. Let's put it that way, okay? And to pick Body Talk and Drive Me Crazy, not necessarily 2 songs I would have thrown out there as primo top shelf live songs for the band. And then we finally get to the last song, which is the one true, dare I say, gem on this rarities reissue. So along with Round and Round, track 2, track 9 is Love on the Rocks, a 1989 demo. Now, I've been digging through my Rat CDs and doing research. I cannot find this ever being released anywhere except on this rarities collection. I'm not 100% sure yet. There's something nagging at the back of my rock and roll brain saying I'm missing something here. But Love on the Rocks is like a new Rat song. It's just awesome to hear. And this is why I'm always a huge proponent of open up the vaults. I don't care who you are. Open up the vaults. Let us hear some of these songs, these demos, these ideas you had. Because even though it sounds like I'm ripping rarities apart for being mostly live, rehashed, recycled old Rat songs, there are two outstanding moments. And Love on the Rocks, to me, it's a new Rat song. It's a new Rat song, and it's a really good Rat song. Could it stand to be a little bit more polished, engineered? Of course. I kind of find it interesting that this did not make an album. And again, 99% sure it cannot be found on an album. But I won't go 100% yet. Like I said, there's a little voice in my head telling me we might be missing something here. Might. Slight chance. But Love on the Rocks, along with that Round and Round first version, they make rarities worth listening to. Now, if you're a diehard Rat fan, you have got to listen to rarities. But if you're not a Rat fan, there's nothing on this that's going to pull you in. So this is for the fans, and the fans only, especially the diehard Rat fans. So cannot recommend rarities to anybody except that particular subset of people in the world of rock and roll. And I could probably say the same thing about my second archival release. Now this one is out. It was delayed, but it finally came out here within the last couple weeks. Rick Emmett of Triumph. Diamonds. The best of the hard rock years 1990 to 1995. This is after he had left Triumph and went out on his own. I am not going to go over familiar old territory and tell you that that band would have been better if they'd stuck together. He needed Gilmore and Mike Levine just like they needed him. The one album they put out without him, I believe it was Edge of Excess, failed miserably, and Rick Emmett did not do much in his solo career. Now, this is why we have not heard new material from any member of Triumph for the most part. Emmett has put out stuff sporadically. Res 9 was a great album. But even that's probably going on a decade since we got Res 9. But what this is, as the title alludes to, is this is a compilation of Rick Emmett's 3 solo albums between 1990 and 1995. The good thing about this is that for most of us, by that point in time, this isn't the good part, but bear with me. When we hit the 90s, what do we know? Grunge took over. Grunge pretty much killed off, for the most part, classic rock in terms of new music. People were still listening to the old stuff, but didn't want new stuff from these bands and these performers. So Rick Emmett kind of put himself between a rock and a hard place here. The good part of this is that this is like, just with Rat and Love on the Rocks, this is like found money. This is like a new album that I didn't really know most of the songs on. So it feels like a new album to me. I'd heard Big Lie before, That was really the only one that jumped out at me in terms of, yeah, I think I did hear that. I'm sure that was probably the lead-off single off his first solo album, and it I'm sure got a little bit of airplay. But let's run down the 11 songs on the CD version because tracks 10 and 11 are CD only, bonus songs. How often do we get that anymore? Maybe it's an homage to the glory days of Triumph. So, Drive Time leads off Diamonds. Drive Time is bluesy. You would expect there are certain things you're going to get from Rick Emmett that carried over from Foreigner, from Triumph. I don't know why I was thinking of Foreigner. Maybe because I'm seeing them in concert this week, and I'll have that review for you next week. But a lot of the themes lyrically, a lot of the sounds that he perfected in Triumph, I know me saying that has got the critics at Rolling Stone tearing their hair out because they hate Triumph. They always hated Triumph, even though Allied Forces is one of the greatest albums ever made. They're too stubborn, too stuck up to acknowledge it because they just can't have fun. But Rick Emmett's got a big blues background in terms of how he plays guitar. Also, his lyrics tend to focus on politics, his politics, which lean to the right. A lot of talk about religion, a lot of talk about greed and the almighty dollar. So, right off the bat, Drive Time is the blues side of Rick Emmett. To me, it almost harkens a little bit back to classic, wait for it, Foghat. Had a little tiny bit of a Foghat feel to it. He's never been the strongest vocalist in the world. Not bad. Much stronger in terms of guitar than in terms of his vocals. And he's over singing a little bit here on Drive Time, but still solid lead-off track. And I will say this right now, spoiler alert, I did not hate any one of these 11 songs. Straight Up is the second track. Now the vocals almost on this become too subtle, but you've got some wicked, nasty slide guitar on Straight Up. This is a little bit of an upgrade from Drive Time. Very good again. Now the next couple songs sound a lot like radio-friendly Triumph. Track 3 is Bang On. Track 4 is Saved by Love, which to me sounded a little bit like they were ripping off Somebody's Out There, one of their bigger hits. And when we reviewed Collective Soul here recently, just last week, I talked about on a couple tracks how Collective Soul seemed to be ripping themselves off. Now, Saved by Love has strings, keyboard. Sometimes I have a problem discerning the two. And if the liner notes don't give me enough information, I'm befuddled as to if it's keyboards or strings. I was reading today a little bit of an aside about Big Country. Remember Big Country and A Big Country Dream and how they made their sound through guitars sound like bagpipes. So even though I know this, a lot of you know that, there are probably people out there who think they were actually using bagpipes. So I will never, ever, ever 100% say if I don't know for sure it's keyboards or strings, guitar, or bagpipes with Eddie Van Halen's Cathedral, his classic solo. Sounds like an organ, but we all know it's guitar. I will refrain from saying 100% for sure what we're listening to. But Bang On and Saved by Love both exude that positivity. Another signature of Rick Emmett's lyrics, where he tries to be a very, very positive, very, very upbeat guy, and trying to tell everybody to stick it out. Of course, fight the good fight, despite the forces that be aligning against you with a little bit of that right-wing paranoia. But both are really good. Both are really good. Very different. You get the rockin' Triumph sound, and you get more of the ballady Triumph with Saved by Love, but both very polished, very radio friendly. Then we get track 5, When a Heart Breaks, which slips a little bit too far into the ballad category for me. Now, it's not the worst ballad you're ever going to hear, but it's not the best either. It still comes off as a little cheesy. It's not Open Arms. It's not Can't Fight This Feeling. So it's not awful. It's just not great either. Probably the weakest moment on the album. Then I mentioned track 6, Big Lie, which I believe I heard on the radio once or twice back when Rick Emmett first went solo. And this is where we really get hit over the head with his political views. And a lot again about greed and the man's against you, and the man is trying to screw you over any chance he can get. It's solid for what it is. Then Rainbow Man, track 7, a little more down and dirty. If you listen to the production value, it's and Rick Emmett's almost singing in a growl throughout the song, which makes it very appealing and very different. So I liked Rainbow Man. Then Middle Ground, we kind of get more of what we got in The Big Lie. This one might even be more heavy-handed and melodramatic, though. I think the message in the end, though, works. I just don't think Emmett conveys it musically well enough. Because in the end, I agree with the sentiment. In that, wouldn't it be nice if we were all in the middle ground and we all had common sense and could see things from all sides, the right, the left? That's a positive message. Musically, I don't think it necessarily works all that great. And then track 9, the end of the quote-unquote official version of Diamonds, is the hardest part, which is a awesome blues workout. Probably Rick Emmett's guitar is no better than on this song here throughout Diamonds. This is the highlight for him in terms of his guitar work. Blistering solo here on the hardest part. And then we get the 2 bonus CD tracks. Again, a big time throwback to the 80s and the 90s. Track 10, I'm telling you right now, if you listen to track 10, Stand and Deliver, listen to it all the way through, and you tell me if this is not a direct sequel in how it's structured, how it plays out, the lyrics, the same kind of messaging. It's a direct sequel to Fight the Good Fight. Is it as good? No, obviously. Nothing is ever going to be as good as Fight the Good Fight, which I think is one of the most abused and underrated songs of all time. Why can't we just have a simple, solid, unbelievably structured song about optimism, fighting the powers that try to keep you down every minute of your lifetime, every moment, every day? Rolling Stone, oh, well, that's not good enough. We need Bob Dylan or we need Neil Young. Sorry. A little bit of immaturity there on my part as I raspberried through my hatred of Rolling Stone magazine. So I've gone back and forth with all the times I've listened to Diamonds with this song. In the end, I think I've settled on the fact that it's pretty good. It's pretty damn good. It is not Fight the Good Fight, but you can tell sonically, in spirit, this is a sequel to that classic legendary song. And then finally, we end with The Pendulum. Now, whereas The Hardest Part featured Rick Emmett's guitar work, whoever's playing percussion on The Pendulum deserves kudos, because the percussion, the different forms of percussion used, exemplary, unbelievable, fantastic. Now, lyrically, this again comes off as cynical Rick Emmett, focusing on the negative aspects of society, but it's not bombastic or melodramatic. It's really, actually, I will say, beautifully low key in how it works. So despite covering ground that he covers all the time, The Pendulum works out really well. So just like with Rat earlier, with Diamonds here by Rick Emmett, we're dealing with older songs. We're dealing with decades old songs. But Diamonds to me was like a wonderful gift. Almost all these songs I had never heard before. He didn't get any radio airplay for these songs, for these albums that the songs are drawn from. It's a wonderful surprise, especially I qualified Rat's rarities by saying if you're a diehard Rat fan, you might like parts of rarities, but you're not going to bring in new fans. I will probably say the same thing about Diamonds by Rick Emmett, but it'll be a more welcome surprise for Triumph fans in that this feels like an entire album of brand new material. Now, the die-hard Triumph fans are poo-pooing me right now, going, we've heard this all before. We love Rick Emmett. We bought all his solo albums. I'm very happy for you. And I am a big Triumph fan as well. But to me, this was found material. This was brand new found material that I just loved. It's solid from beginning to end. A few ups, a few downs, but nothing terrible. You would expect that since he got to cherry pick the best off of his first 3 solo albums. But I don't have a problem with it. I still enjoyed it beyond belief. So check out Rick Emmett's Diamonds if you're a Triumph fan. Rarities by Rat. I think that's only for the true blue, dyed-in-the-wool, diehard fans. Rick Emmett, I will expand it a little bit and say, if you liked Triumph, I think you'll like Diamonds by Rick Emmett. 1990 to 1995, the best of the hard rock years. A little bit of a different breakdown segment for you. And that'll do it. We'll take a quick 3 or 4 second cheesy music interlude break, and I'll be right back out in the rock and roll garage here at the Fortress of Rock, hopping in the DeLorean with Doc Brown as we get ready to go back in time for I Want to Go Back. Hang on just a few seconds, and we will be right back. All right, we're back on the Fortress of Rock here, June the 7th, 2024, episode 147. Sitting to my left is the great Doc Brown as he prepares to fire up the rock and roll DeLorean to 1.21 gigawatts and take us into the rock and roll time stream as we get ready for segment 3. I want to go back, our tribute to the late, great Eddie Money. Of course, this is when we look back at anniversaries of classic album releases, birthdays, and moments in rock history. But as we get up to speed, I will quickly take care of business. You found us somewhere, you're listening, so obviously you have a preferred platform, or maybe this isn't your preferred platform. So keep in mind you have options and choices. You can listen to the Fortress of Rock every Friday night and go back and listen to old episodes on Spotify, Pocket Casts, Apple, iHeartRadio, Overcast, Amazon Music, Castbox, and Audible. Do not forget to check out the Facebook page. Always have fun stuff going on over the weekend on the Facebook page. In concert, no pun intended, with the dropping of the brand new episode of the Fortress of Rock Friday night, we also post your Weekend Rock Project Challenge, where we give you an idea, a theme, a word, something, and you give us your best song that fits that particular theme, word, or category. Now, this week I'm cheating a little bit. I do this once in a while. When a band is going out on tour, and of course it's going to happen a lot during the summer, I tend to, on occasion, ask for your favorite song by that band. So, since Styx and Foreigner, along with John Waite, are going to kick off their tour, Renegades and Jukebox Heroes, this coming Tuesday up in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Now, we've done Foreigner in the past, so this is for Styx only. I want your favorite, your personal favorite Styx song. I put out there The Grand Illusion, a song that I've really fallen in love with over the last couple decades, the title track from their classic album. Now, the last time I saw them, it's been a while, but the last time I saw them, I remember that song just blew me away, along with, of course, Renegade, many other great. They were phenomenal the last time I saw them, so I'm hoping that my friends are going with me and they've never seen Styx, so I'm hoping the show quality is just as good for them as it was for me. But yeah, I went with The Grand Illusion. So you pick your favorite. I will say I did post among my friends. I didn't put it on the Fortress of Rock Facebook page, but among my friends, I told them, if you pick Babe, you will get 1,000 demerits. Sorry, one of the worst songs ever. Why is it all these great bands we referenced earlier, REO Speedwagon and Can't Fight This Feeling, and Journey and Open Arms, why do they always have to put out one god-awful cheesy song that's just vomit-inducing? But I digress. And then Sunday is, of course, on our Facebook page is New Music Sunday. Brand new song we'll put out there for you. And all of a sudden we have, after a couple weeks with not much in the way of new songs, we've got a handful to choose from. So something good coming this Sunday for New Music Sunday. And then, of course, I need help with ideas for segment 1 and segment 3. because I can't do it alone. Nobody can do it alone. Three main sources for most of my stories in news of the world, and I want to go back, come from ultimateclassicrock.com, thisdayinmusic.com, and the Van Halen newsdesk.com, along with a few other places that I nitpick from, pick and choose. Let's start off with birthdays here, and I want to go back. Born on this day, June the 7th, 1967, Dave Navarro, guitarist for not only the Red Hot Chili Peppers, but Jane's Addiction. Now, I've already, over the last month or two, talked about Jane's Addiction, and not necessarily my cup of tea. So let's go off on another track here talking about Dave Navarro. Dave Navarro was the co-host, if you guys remember, a reality show that lasted for 2 seasons, I believe on CBS, called Rock Star. And I do not like reality television. In fact, I abhor it. I think it is part, along with cell phones and social media, part of the downfall of our society. I don't care what normal people do. This is part of the problem. Leave people alone. Let them live their lives inside their homes and do whatever they want. I don't need cameras in there showing me what they're doing. And I know they want their Andy Warhol 15 minutes of fame, but it's just disgusting with how many people think they deserve that 15 minutes of fame. Now, I will admit I do watch On Patrol Live. That is the one reality show I watch. Because sadly, it makes me feel better when I see all the stupid criminals out there with all their idiotic excuses for, yeah, I've got drugs in the car, but I didn't know my tag light was out. Here's an idea. Get the tag light fixed so you don't get pulled over. Otherwise, don't carry drugs in your car. But anyway, circling back. Rockstar aired for 2 seasons. The first season, the expert panel tried to find, judging like an American Idol type show, the new replacement lead singer for In Excess. Of course, this was years after the tragic death of Michael Hutchence. And then the second season was where they were trying to find a lead singer for a supergroup featuring Tommy Lee, Jason Newsted, and Gilby Clarke called Supernova. And again, Dave Navarro co-hosted that show for 2 years. Fun show, great show. And I still have that Rockstar Supernova CD somewhere. And it wasn't bad. It's actually a pretty good album. So Dave Navarro, born on this day in 1967, of course, getting ready to head back out with Jane's Addiction as they have reformed. A band I will be reviewing for you later this summer. One of my personal favorites. You're probably like, you make it sound like every band is your personal favorite, Maestro. Like, yeah, I got like 30, 40 bands that I just absolutely love. Bands, performers. Sorry. With all the music I listen to, I think that's a reasonable number. Stone Temple Pilots. Born on this day, June the 7th, 1966, Eric Kretz, the drummer for STP. Another drummer, born on this day, June the 7th, 1962, The vastly underrated, underrecognized Michael Cardellone. Well, if you do not know who he is, shame on you, because he has been the drummer not only for currently for Leonard Skinner, and he has been their drummer for a long time. But shame on you for forgetting he was the drummer for the supergroup, the glorious Damn Yankees. Everybody remembers Ted Nugent, Jack Blades, Tommy Shaw, but they never remember Michael Cardellone was on drums. So happy birthday, born on this day, 1962, Michael Cardellone. Then we get into the heavy hitters. Born on this day, June the 7th, 1958, the late, the great Prince. And I have always had profound respect for Prince in that I think he was the one artist better than anybody else who was able to bring together all different audiences and expose them to all sorts of different music. He was the epitome of the 80s. And of course, his influence went beyond that through today. But Prince was the prototypical 80s superstar in that his music brought us together. Didn't matter if you were into funk, hip hop, rap, rock and roll. If you were into rock and roll, you could not help but be blown away by his guitar work. But his creativity. Look at all the albums that have been put out by his estate after his passing. All the vault material. He was arguably the most creative human being when it came to output, and never stopping, never ceasing, always putting out new music, always trying to put out something. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it was brilliant, and sometimes it didn't. But now, when we look at what we're getting in this day and age, because of course nobody can make any money because of Spotify and because of Apple and streaming services. So they refuse to make new music. And that's just wrong. And Prince was the antithesis of that. Prince was constantly creating, constantly making new music. And again, sometimes it was hit and miss. But when he went on a creative jag and it was good, it was really good. Then finally, June the 7th, 1917, one of the great crooners of all time. Unfortunately, probably most well known for being in the tank, let's say. Member of the Rat Pack, not the Brat Pack, the Rat Pack. The great Dean Martin, was born on this day in 1917. Now we've got anniversaries. And unfortunately, we start off as we normally do. A lot of these are usually sad. June the 7th, 2012. Bob Welch died by suicide. Of course, Bob Welch played with Fleetwood Mac at the beginning. Went on to a somewhat successful solo career with a few hits, including one that you'll still occasionally hear on the radio, Ebony Eyes. And then we move back to June the 7th, 2007. The funeral took place for the great Bo Diddley in Gainesville, Florida. On this day, June the 7th, in 1977, Led Zeppelin played the first of 6 sold-out shows at Madison Square Garden. Significant for a couple things. Number one, this was going to turn out to be the final North American tour for Led Zeppelin. And number two, the ticket prices, even in New York City, back in 1977. How about this, kids? Ticket prices were ranging between $8.50 and $10.50. Yes, I know inflation, but come on. I think ticket prices have far exceeded the rate of inflation since 1977. On this day, June the 7th, 1975, Elton John's Captain Fantastic and the Brown Dirt Cowboy was the number one album in the United States. It was the first album ever to enter the Billboard charts at number one. Of course, now that is almost a weekly occurrence with their stupid new rules. But Elton John was that popular back then when it was so rare. And again, he was the first to have an album debut at number one. On this day, June the 7th, 1969, Blind Faith made their live debut in London's Hyde Park. And of course, Blind Faith was a short-lived supergroup, most well known for the borderline obscene album cover. And I'm sorry, even though I'm a big free speech proponent and nothing much phases me, there's still something to this day a little off-putting about putting a young topless girl on the cover of your album and then a phallic symbol possibly accompanying her. Now, Blind Faith featured Eric Clapton, Ginger Baker on drums, and of course, Steve Winwood. On this day, June the 7th, 1964, this is a fun little story. This will show you there are stories about authors that I love. I read a lot of books who were rejected dozens and dozens, if not hundreds of times before finally getting a publishing deal and then becoming award-winning authors. On this day in 1964, the Rolling Stones were booed off the stage in San Antonio, Texas. And to try to appease the crowd, the promoters brought performing monkeys, not the Monkees like Mike Nesmith and Mickey Dolenz. No. Actual performing monkeys who had opened the show were brought back on stage to try to calm the crowd down. How about that for a rock and roll story? And then finally, let's stick with the Rolling Stones. A little bit more positive news here, and I want to go back to wrap things up on June the 7th, 1963. The Rolling Stones released their debut single, a cover of Chuck Berry's Come On. And that'll do it for I Want to Go Back. Doc Brown trying to get us into the garage here, out of the time stream, into the garage at the Fortress of Rock to enjoy the last hour or so of sunlight and beautiful weather before we have to pull up the drawbridge and close things down for the night. But you know we're not done yet. I'll hop back into the studio here at the Fortress of Rock. A couple more minutes discussing the future of music, what we're going to discuss in future episodes. Wrap it up, coming up after a quick, cheesy musical interlude. All right, everybody. The final segment here on June the 7th, 2024 is, of course, Wrap It Up, our tribute to the fabulous Thunderbirds, episode 147 of The Fortress of Rock. Hope you guys have a great, phenomenal weekend. Like I've been saying all throughout this episode, weather outside looks beautiful. I believe it's supposed to be all across the country fantastic. Some areas getting a little bit of a heat wave. I know it's going to move through the country next week, but it's summer. I take summer and 90 degrees any day over cold and snow. If you don't like the summer weather over the winter, I hope you live in Alaska or upper Montana, because otherwise you're nuts. Sorry. Next week on the Fortress of Rock, a very, very full breakdown segment as we will review not only Bon Jovi's brand new album Forever, but we'll also have our third concert review of 2024. Styx, Foreigner, John Waite live opening night in Grand Rapids, Michigan. That episode will hit 1 week from now, June the 14th, 2024, episode 148. Then in 2 weeks, we'll have the brand new album from Mike Campbell and the Dirty Knobs, Vagabonds, Virgins, and Misfits. That will be episode 149, June the 21st, 2024. Now, after that, I'm keeping things a little bit open. I'm hoping to finally give you my final review on that massive, sprawling Hulu documentary featuring Bon Jovi. I know I've been procrastinating on it. I'm still very upset with aspects of it, including his admission that the 2022 Indianapolis show that I was at was pretty much a low point in the history of Bon Jovi. And then, if we don't get to that in 3 weeks or 4 weeks, we will have the PBS 3-part docuseries, Disco, Soundtrack of a Revolution. I will be watching that and give you my take on that. If you're not DVRing it, I suggest you do, so you can watch it as well and keep up with me as I go through all 3 episodes. Now, I mentioned we've got finally some new songs to go through. We've got the second single off of Deep Purple's upcoming album, Equals One. Second single is Pictures of You. Then we mentioned The Offspring with the brand new album, Supercharged, out October the 11th. Their first single off of that album is Make It All Right. So we'll have that for you coming up in the next couple weeks here on the Fortress of Rock. And I don't want to make the comparison, so don't start giving me a hard time. But David Lee Roth has got a little bit of Prince in him. And the reason I say that is because he keeps putting out music every 2 or 3 weeks. And he's been doing it for a while. Sometimes it's revamped Van Halen songs with his band. Sometimes it's brand new stuff we've never heard before. Sometimes, as in this case, it's intriguing cover songs. Now, I don't know if he's actually calling it 867-5309 Jenny, because if you watch the video on YouTube for it, and it's bizarre, would you expect anything less from Diamond Dave? he seems to be calling it Jenny Jenny, subtitled That Telephone Song. So why not? Let's talk about, in a week or two, what David Lee Roth has done with one of the most beloved songs of the 80s. Now, in addition to that, we're still hopefully going to get to that Hold Steady A-side, B-side release here from the last couple months, as well as Mark Knopfler and his EP from Record Store Day, The Boy, and the new video. Still haven't got an official song release yet, but the new video featuring a new song from Roger Clyne and the Peacemakers, You Got Lightnin'. And so that leaves us with the top album and the top songs of the week here on the Fortress of Rock for June the 7th, 2024, our tribute to the old Billboard charts back when they mattered, and of course, America's Top 40 with Casey Kasem. And since I cheated a little bit in Breakdown, I'm going to cheat a little bit when it comes to my number one album. I did it earlier this year. I'm going to do it again. I thought Collective Soul's Here to Eternity would have enough momentum to keep the top spot. And again, this is all subjective based on what I listened to throughout the week. But I was impressed enough and listened to it enough where I am going to have to go with Rick Emmett's Diamonds, Best of the Hard Rock Years, 1990 to 1995, as our top album this week on the Fortress of Rock. So that's kind of like keeping in spirit with the current Billboard charts, where Queen's greatest hits and Journey's greatest hits always end up in the Hot 100 or the Top 100. Sorry, the Hot 100 is singles, Top 200 is albums, but those compilations, because of the Spotify and the streaming rules they've put in, always end up in the Top 100, which is bullpucky. It's wrong. It's stupid. Now, as far as songs go, we don't do that. We don't cheat. It's got to be something new here. But we do always pick two. We do pick two songs most weeks. And Collective Soul does make an appearance here as one of our two top songs of the week here on the Fortress of Rock. This time we're going to go with Kick It, another track from Collective Soul's good, solid, but not great double album, Here to Eternity. So Kick It by Collective Soul. And this should tell you it was kind of a down week for me in terms of what I listened to. Obviously, going back to Breakdown, I listened to a lot of older stuff. So, Deep Purple's brand new song that I just mentioned, Pictures of You, will share top honors this week with Collective Soul. So, Kick It and Pictures of You are the top two songs, the top songs this week on the Fortress of Rock charts. And of course, next week we will have our full review of Pictures of You for you in Breakdown. But that's going to do it for the Fortress. Once again, hope you enjoy the beautiful weather. Hope you enjoy the rest of tonight and the rest of your weekend. We'll see you back here in 7 days for episode 148 of the Fortress of Rock. I am the Maestro, Kevin Crane. You are who you are. Enjoy your life. Live every minute. Love every day. Of course, that's cribbed from the cheesy Kevin Cronin. And then from the old hippy dippy days, don't forget to love the one you're with. Take it easy, kids. Peace out. We'll talk again in 7 days.